It's been 2 years since the horrific October 7 terror attacks in Israel. I think we all remember where we were when we heard the news that Hamas terrorists launched the deadliest attack on Jews since the Holocaust. More than 1,200 men and women were killed, women were raped in one of the most evil acts imaginable. Joining us now is Joel Burnie, Executive Manager at the Australia, Israel and Jewish Affairs Council. Joel, thank you so much for your time. Our hearts are certainly with everyone in Israel and all of our Jewish friends here in Australia and right around the world. Today I'm thinking about the family members of hostages who haven't seen their loved ones in 2 years, and of course reflecting on the time I spent in Israel. I've said this before, but I've never felt anything as dark as visiting the site of the Nova Music Festival just months after that terror attack, where that festival became a killing field on October 7 and innocent people were captured and taken hostage. Joel, can I get your reflections today?
Well, thank you as always, Gabriella, for having me on. It's a very tough day for Jews worldwide. It's a very tough day for Israelis. It's a very tough day for Australian Jews. The horrific events of 2 years ago, we all remember, as you say, where we were. I have spent a lot of time in Israel since and exposed lots of Australians to the horrors of what happened, and it's just unfortunate that I don't think that any Australians who remember where they were on this day 2 years ago would have thought that we would be at this stage where Australian Jews are at 2 years later. It's been a tortuous and abundantly difficult period for Australian Jews in the shadow of, as you say, the most horrific attack on Jews since the end of the Holocaust. The explosion of anti-Semitism, which has been associated with the massacre on October 7, 2023, has been felt by Australian Jews more than many other Jews around the world. And it's a continuing issue that so many Australian Jews are feeling unsafe in their own country. And the solemn part of this day is, unfortunately, we have to share the podium with very unsympathetic and mean elements of Australian society that think that now is the time to not only celebrate what Hamas has done, but to rub that in the face of the Australian Jewish community. So I've got mixed feelings, Gabriella, sadness, deep sadness and sorrow, but I'm equally saddened by the state of affairs in our country right now.
Yeah, you mentioned the explosion in anti-Semitic attacks. I mean, just in the last 24 hours, a billboard has been vandalised with anti-Semitic graffiti in Fitzroy. The phrase "Glory to Hamas" was spray painted above a busy intersection in Fitzroy. And you mentioned the protests that are being planned. I mean, pro-Palestine activists are still trying to push ahead with this protest set to be at the Opera House, to Hyde Park this weekend. And we all remember the ugly scenes during the pro-Palestine protests that took place just days after the October 7 terror attack. And we've seen so many demonstrations here in Sydney and in different parts of Australia where there has been so many anti-Semitic chants being chanted, anti-Semitic symbols being held up, and a lot of support for Hamas, Joel.
Well, anti-Semitism has been normalised in Australia over the past 2 years, Gabriella. So these protest movements, we've been seeing a protest on a weekly basis in Melbourne, for instance. So Melbourne CBD has been a no-go zone for Jews for 2 years. The Premier is aware of it, the police are aware of it, but they seemingly don't have any tools in their toolkit to make it more free for Jews to be able to go to downtown Melbourne on a Sunday. The idea that in Sydney a protest would be organised in and around the anniversary of the massacre at the Opera House itself is purposefully designed to rub it in the face of Jewish community in Australia, but to also highlight and illustrate that they believe that they have won. They believe that they own the streets. They believe that they can chant death to the IDF, Zionists are terrorists, from the river to the sea, these genocidal statements on the streets of Sydney, Melbourne and elsewhere with full freedom. And the Opera House, we all remember the events of October the 9th, just a mere 48 hours after the massacre itself. these protesters hijacked the whole agenda by their violent chants, which also, the Attorney General of New South Wales warned Jews 2 years ago not to go to downtown Sydney for their own safety. So where have we come? What have we learned from those 2 years, both at a state and federal level? We have allowed these protests to continue. I do note that in New South Wales they are challenging the protest location at the New South Wales Supreme Court. I believe it's being moved to the Court of Appeals for a hearing tomorrow.
Yeah.
But the idea that in this country that it is okay to celebrate the murder of 1,200 Jews at such iconic areas in Sydney, Melbourne or elsewhere in this great country, you would have thought that that unsavoury type of behaviour would have been called out and quashed 2 years ago, but still now we're still having to fight with these guys on the streets of Melbourne and Sydney and elsewhere. And we as a community and the Jewish community have had a gut feel, but I do suggest that the rest of Australia has had a gutful as well.
Oh, 100%, Joel.